Hello once again everyone, this is Keegan83 of We Fell in a Tree, and welcome to the 2013 E3 pre-show presented by the Super Gaming Network. Well everyone, where there's first-party developers and publishers, there's also third-party developers and publishers, and there's certainly a number of gamers who are hoping and awaiting to see what their favorite company outside of the big three has in store for the future. So without further ado, let's dive right in, and to let everyone know, I'm going into details on as many of the third-party names as I can try to get to. So if I leave someone out, please don't hesitate to comment. I'm also going to try to not hang on that company for a very long time because there's so many of them to talk about. Let's start off with one of my all-time favorite publishers, Sega. Ah, Sega. The memories will never leave me. I'm happy to say that Sega is going into E3 with a lot of good momentum. Business is good for the company. Their shares are the highest they've been in years. Their current strategy has been successful. They've acquired a new developer earlier this year. Sonic games are back on track. And once in a while, we'll see something that gives the enjoyment of knowing that Sega is still trying, with recent games like Binary Domain and Yakuza being proof of that. Now going into E3, with things going so well, I, along with a huge fan base, are wondering what's Sega going to announce this year. Some of the games so far have been announced from recent months, and so far it's a pretty good lineup. There's 2 new Sonic games on the way, and they are exclusively for the Wii U system. This is something I mentioned earlier. And these 2 new Sonic games, they're part of a new exclusive partnership with Nintendo. One game is another Mario and Sonic game, and the other is called Sonic Lost World, which sounds like it could be the next main game in the main Sonic series. There's also a third game being hinted at, which some rumors seem to point to a possible crossover racing game, which is something that Sumo Digital has done with the Sonic and Sega All-Stars racing games. But I'll leave it at that for the moment for post-E3 impressions. Sega is also bringing another couple of games into the fold, like a new HD remaster of Castle of Illusion starring Mickey Mouse, the original game, and even the Total War series is getting some good attention with a sequel due out this September. I guess the only real big question for me to Sega right now is, will there be any secrets unveiled at E3 from them? There's been a lot of things that have created some conversations this year about some of those subjects. And some of those subjects were involving a certain Sonic game, the possibility of Yakuza 5 coming over to the West as well, and the HD re-releases of the first 2 Yakuza games, which have also yet to make it over to the West, and Backbone Entertainment, a company that Sega has been working with for the past few years when it comes to porting over older games. They actually made a pitch to Sega to revive the old Streets of Rage series, which hasn't had a new game since 1994. It's been dormant since 1994. I would love to see that series come back. In conclusion, I'm hoping Sega has a great E3, and they've been through a lot, and it's great to see them finally doing well again. So best of luck to Sega and their plans for E3. Next up is Warner Bros. Interactive Entertainment. Much like Sega, I absolutely praise this publisher. They're probably one of my favorite publishers this generation, and the future looks really bright for WB Games. Now, since there's so many developers who are making games for them, I will be trying to include them into the Warner Bros. Category. Warner right now has some real good games on the way. There's a chance we'll see Batman Arkham Origins by WB Games Montreal. That was announced earlier this year. We could see that at E3. There's a Young Justice game being developed by Little Orbit, which, despite the cancellation of the Young Justice TV series, is so far still on track for this September to be released. It was delayed, but so far it's still on track for release. There's Scribblenauts Unmasked / DC Comics Adventures that was announced recently. Plus, there's some more LEGO games from Traveler's Tales that are on the way. I would go into detail of what those LEGO games are, but once again, that's where the post impressions comes in handy. There also has been some speculation of another game from Rocksteady Studios in the future, but until something comes up, we really don't have anything about that right now. To be honest, I really like what Warner Brothers and its developers are doing these days. and I'm also looking forward to see what they show off on the floor this year. Next on the list is Konami, another one of my all-time favorite third-party publishers out there. I know I already brought it up, but for all you Konami fans or people who are interested in hearing about what Konami has in store for E3, make sure you tune into their press conference on June 6th at 10 a.m. Pacific Time. Konami has a strong lineup of games they're going to be talking about, which pertain to some of their longest-running franchises, from Metal Gear to Castlevania. So I hope you'll tune into their press conference to see what they're offering. Among these titles that they're going to be showing off are Metal Gear Solid 5, The Phantom Reign, from Kojima Studios, and powered by the newly created Fox engine from Metal Gear creator Kojima himself. There's also Castlevania Lords of Shadow 2, which is a sequel to the previous game, Castlevania Lords of Shadow, which actually came out a couple of years ago, and I heard was actually pretty decent. Love the graphics of it, by the way. I actually really did like that. That game is being developed by Mercury Stream. And then there's Pro Evolution Soccer, the yearly and highly acclaimed soccer series. There's a chance we might even see that at E3, or at least somewhere down the road this year. Konami has also gone on record saying that they also have some key announcements in addition to the titles that are already known about by the public. So who knows? Maybe Konami has a few more games in the pipeline for E3. We may even see some games that haven't even featured some of Konami's all-star lineup in a while. So we'll see what Konami has in store. They're usually pretty good about their games, so we'll see what happens in the future. Up next is Activision, one of the biggest publishers the game industry has known, and also one of the oldest, if not the very first third-party publisher from back in the day. We're going back to Atari days when it comes to that. So what's on their agenda? Well, there's another Call of Duty, which is always nice for fans of that series. There's another Skylanders game. Plus, there's also a game coming pretty soon that's based off the latest Fast and Furious movie, Fast and Furious 6. While it's unknown what else Activision will announce this year, there are some other games that I need to mention. First, there's Deadpool, a game based off a fan-favorite character from Marvel Comics. And he's being voiced by Nolan North. I don't know why I mentioned that, but anyway, the Deadpool game, haven't seen much of it. Hopefully we'll see it this year. It's being developed by High Moon Studios, the same studio behind the two recent Transformers titles. And finally, another game to mention, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Out of the Shadows, developed by Redfly Studio, a Texas-based game development studio. Let me just say, I'm really looking forward to the next Ninja Turtles game, and I'll leave it at that for now. It sounds like a good line of titles Activision has on the way, but one question to them is, actually I could probably make that too, what's Beanox up to these days? Their last title was Amazing Spider-Man, which was from last year, and that was a movie tie-in. And since the release of that game, the Canadian-based company has pretty much been quiet. Plus, while Deadpool is coming out on current platforms this June, which is June 25th, there's not really any other Marvel games coming out this year from Activision, with the exception of another one, not to mention the new title called Destiny, which I also didn't mention, which is being made by the former Halo studio, Bungie. So while it may not sound like the best lineup from a company like Activision, there is at least something to look at among the games, and possibilities could be good. So hopefully Activision will come up with something, as well as show off some neat gameplay footage from games like, say, for example, Deadpool for Deadpool fans, and especially Ninja Turtle fans like me, who have been waiting for Ninja Turtle games for quite a few years by this point. Namco Bandai. Aside from their involvement in the newest Smash Bros. Game, Namco Bandai actually has some other good games that are on the way this year. These games at the moment include a new Armored Core, a sequel to One Piece Pirate Warriors, which is in co-development from Omega Force from Tecmo Koei, we'll get to them soon, as well as Namco Bandai publishing Dark Souls 2, which is a sequel to the original Dark Souls. There's also a new Pac-Man game that was announced recently, which is releasing in line with a new CGI Pac-Man show that's coming this year. We'll talk about that later in another show, when more information is gathered up for it. Now, an interesting question for Namco Bandai is, what's the status of the Tekken X Street Fighter game that was announced almost 3 years ago? I have read that the game is in development, but someone representing Namco Bandai said that the game was only 10% complete as of last year, so only time will tell on this game. So, Namco Bandai looks strong. They seem to have an interesting array of titles in line, and we'll see how they do on the E3 floor. Will we ever see any more Power Rangers games from Namco Bandai again? We'll never know. Ubisoft, another big publisher, and pretty much labeled by the gaming community as kings of the show from last E3. For the record, I have to agree with that statement, but only because they actually brought the games. I personally thought their press conference in general last year was one of the worst press conferences I'd ever seen from E3, but that's coming from me. But the games they showed last year, they were pretty good, because you had games like Assassin's Creed, Far Cry 3, and Rayman Legends that were definitely crowd pleasers. So I'll have to agree, Ubisoft was pretty much kings of the show, but only because they brought the games. I didn't care for that freaking press conference. Anyway, this year, Ubisoft has another batch of titles ready for showing, and the games that they may show may include Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag, Splinter Cell Blacklist, and Watch Dogs, which was a game that they showed last year. Another title to mention is Rayman Legends, which, based off watching trailers and seeing a demo by a fellow YouTuber, that game looks pretty cool. But the big questions are, will people still want the game, and will it be a success? The game was due to come out back in February, but Ubisoft instead opted to delay the game until September and made it available for both PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360, in addition to the Wii U, compared to last year when Rayman Legends was a Wii U exclusive. Plus, from what I heard in the midst of the major backlash from both gamers and even the game's own developer, a lot of content and work has been put into the game. It sounds like Rayman Legends will be a good quality game, and people might still want it. But with GTA 5 releasing around the same time as Rayman Legends now, it might not do as well in terms of sales. So that's something to keep an eye on for right now. Oh, and by the way, for those who were expecting Rockstar to show off anything at E3, that remains to be seen. Rockstar has never really been much of an attendee at E3 since 2004 because of a specific scandal, which I won't get into here. So chances of playing a demo at Grand Theft Auto 5 may be slim. They may announce something and show off something around the same time of the E3 events, but no news from that has been given as far as I know of. Plus 2K Games in general, the other branch of Take-Two Interactive, they're going to be skipping E3 too. They will have plenty of games on the way, which includes an array of sports games involving NBA and the newly acquired WWE license, but this year, they decided not to attend. And speaking of game companies not attending, unfortunately, we have a few publishers missing from the floor of games this year. These companies are THQ, which went into bankruptcy last year and liquidated this year, Hudson Soft, which didn't go out of business, thankfully, but they agreed to be absorbed by Konami, so they still exist, but they're just not really called Hudson anymore. There's Crave Entertainment, which was famous for publishing games like Intellivision Lives and the Pinball Hall of Fame games. They were mainly a company who did budget titles, but they filed bankruptcy last year, and they had some pretty good games. And most recently, LucasArts, which technically isn't gone, but no longer a developer and publisher, thanks to Disney, who we'll be getting to soon. But before we move on to the next third-party company, let's have a moment of silence for the publishers and developers of gaming that we've lost in the last year of this generation. Thank you. Capcom, a company that's been famous for their Resident Evil games, Street Fighter, Mega Man, the Capcom Vs. series, and many other titles that definitely make up a very long list. Despite the criticism with the DLC activities that the company has tried the last couple of years, Capcom, like many, has a few titles that may be good to hear about. The newest IP from them is Remember Me, which is a futuristic action-adventure stealth game as well as incorporating some interactive cinema features. The title features a female protagonist who is trying to regain her memory after it was erased by her employers. There's also another game from Capcom called Lost Planet 3, as well as a future PS4 title that was teased at an earlier press conference. But the big question among many gamers' minds is, will Capcom bring back a character that's been around for 25 years now? Mega Man. While Mega Man hasn't been active for the last couple of years, fans have just been clamoring for a new game in the series. And with the cancellation after cancellation of Mega Man games over the past 2 years, fans have been wondering if Capcom still even cares about their blue mascot anymore. Capcom has been saying things to help celebrate the character's 25th anniversary, and while even mentioning the possibility of a new game, nothing has come about it at this point. So maybe this year, it could be the year that Mega Man fans will rejoice with a new game. But like I've said before twice, only time will tell. Now we go over to the Ninja Tribunal with Tecmo Koei, the dojo of games which include Ninja Gaiden and Dynasty Warriors. I'm not sure how big Tecmo and Koei are compared to other companies in Japan like Capcom and Konami, for example, but they once in a while, Tecmo and Koei will bring out something good to the table. There's One Piece Pirate Warriors 2, which is being developed by Tecmo Koei's developer Omega Force, but published by Namco and Bandai, which I already mentioned earlier. There's Dynasty Warriors 8, which is due out in the United States on July 16th, and there's also a new title called Yaiba, with the subtitle Ninja Gaiden Z, officially making it a spin-off in the Ninja Gaiden series. And it's a co-developed project between Tecmo Koei's own Team Ninja, the independently known Spark Unlimited, and the newly created studio called Concept, which is headed by Mega Man co-creator Keiji Inafune, who's possibly even directing the game. So while there's not much to talk about with Tecmo Koei, they do have some good names in the hat to pick from. Will we ever see any Dragon Ball games that both Tecmo Koei and Namco Bandai could work on together? Like Power Rangers, we'll never know. Square Enix. Known for their critically acclaimed RPG games and recognized for their talent in producing high-quality graphics and memorable music with a strong narrative. While Square has been a force to be reckoned with great games, the company has also been on the tail end of being in a rut the last few years. Games like Kane and Lynch 2, Dungeon Siege 3, and Nair were considered mixed to negative. They've also been reshuffling a little bit with the stepping down and departure of two company presidents. But lately, the Japanese gaming giant has been able to reel off a small string of hits lately, like Hitman Absolution, Sleeping Dogs, and Tomb Raider, which have all been appreciated by both gamers and even critics. Now, while the company has been having success, can they keep it going? Square Enix has several games coming, including a brand new IP called Murdered Soul Suspect. There's a reboot to the Thief series, and HD remixes of Kingdom Hearts 1.5 and Final Fantasies X and X-2. They also have Lightning Returns Final Fantasy XIII 3, which is serving as the conclusion to the Final Fantasy XIII storyline. Plus, Square Enix has also announced the possibilities of developing for, say, a future system. Speaking of Final Fantasy, there is always a chance a new game in the series will be announced, which right now include the long in development Final Fantasy Versus 13, which has been in development for 7 years now, making it one of the longest titles in the Final Fantasy series to be in development. There also have been rumors that the game has been moved to the PlayStation 4 and renamed Final Fantasy 15, but other than the possibility of Square Enix developing a PlayStation 4 game, it remains a mystery to this day. I think that's it for what we have for Square for now. So for all the people out there who are looking forward to Square's next games, there's a lot to look forward to. They may be in a bit of a rebuilding process internally, but hopefully it leads to Square Enix cranking out some more good, high-quality games that they're known for. And they have gone on record saying that they are holding live broadcasts at E3 this year, so look out for that. And now we move on to Disney Interactive Studios. Well, for starters, you can't deny that Disney is a successful company. They have had good movies, their amusement parks, a lot of people go to every year. Disney is successful. But when it comes to video games, they've been kind of hit and miss. I remember a few years ago when Disney announced that they were going to make an attempt to making better games themselves, and it resulted in some success. Pirates of the Caribbean at World's End turned out to be rather decent. Pure from the late BlackRock Studios was a hit on the market, and Epic Mickey, despite its mixed results, both critically and the players who played the game, was a financial success. But for the last couple of years, the House of Mouse has made a lot of changes to their video game strategies. They've closed down 3 studios since 2011, with the Epic Mickey development house Junction Point being the latest. They've also tried to enter the video game digital market scene, and I have no idea how that worked out. Nowadays, they act more like a publisher and licensor. With the closing of LucasArts, to many people's dismay, Disney has arranged for all video games featuring characters based off the Lucasfilm's properties will now be more or less licensed with Disney involved, and the licensing can be accessed by third parties, and I'm happy to say a couple of good things have happened since that move. The NES favorite DuckTales is getting an HD remake, which is being developed by WayForward Technologies, who's become a really good developer, especially the last few years. And I've even heard that Capcom might even be taking part of that in the capacity, since they did publish the original DuckTales games. There's also Castle of Illusion, the remake featuring Mickey Mouse from Sega, but I've already mentioned that. Among other licensing is the new exclusive deal to make core Star Wars games between Disney and Electronic Arts. Let me just say, why Disney? You could have chosen someone else to help develop Star Wars games instead of going exclusive with the worst party in America. But I digress. Because I don't need to go into that just yet, and I'll be talking about that company next. I guess in general, there is something worthwhile from Disney, and that's in the form of games like DuckTales and Castle of Illusion HD. There's also the Disney Infinity game, which is being promoted these days, so there is something to look forward to if you're a fan of Disney games. EA Sports. It's in the game. EA. What am I going to do with you? I'm going to be honest with everyone here. I don't really like EA. I only support them 15% of the time now, and I just really don't like how they've been going about themselves lately, with their decision-making especially. Now, while I say that, in my perspective, there are actually... Let me rephrase that. There's actually a pretty good amount of people who actually do get a kick out of EA's games, and I'll admit that. I do also have a few games on my PlayStation that I actually do get a little bit of enjoyment out of. But it's only because my interest was there. So what kinds of games can we expect from EA this year? Especially since they've been dubbed the worst company in this country of the US of A. And how can they perform well to avoid a third straight year of being voted the worst company? Well, you got the Star Wars exclusive license, which is something I've already mentioned. They will go into details on that, by the way, when it comes to E3 this year. There's Madden 25, okay. NHL 14, okay. FIFA 14, okay. There's NBA Live 14, and I'm a bit on the fence with that one even coming out because the last couple of NBA Lives they've tried, they've had to cancel. They canceled 11, and they also canceled another one, which I believe was either 12 or 13. They ended up skipping a year a bit there. And then there's Battlefield 4. Now, I guess one of the questions for EA is it possible we'll see something new from them this year, like a sequel to a game or two we haven't seen in years? Or heck, why not an original title that doesn't involve the yearly chain? Well, only time will tell once again. Oh, and to go a little bit more into it, I already mentioned it earlier, EA will be going into detail on the Star Wars partnership that they got with Disney. So for those who are curious, feel free to take a look. I'm going to look into it anyway because it has gotten my interest within that partnership. And I actually have gotten enjoyment out of some past Star Wars games in my life. But because of that 2-letter logo there among this partnership, I'm skeptic. But that's just me once again. Well, everyone, this looks like this concludes our look at the third-party companies at E3 for the E3 pre-show. There's some hints of brilliance and blunders, but there is something to look forward to when it comes to E3. Whether it's the new consoles or the new games provided for your gaming entertainment, E3 is perhaps the best convention to look forward to on what's coming out next for this year, and sometimes releases for next year. And you never know. Maybe we'll see some games from companies that I haven't even mentioned that haven't been around that much. Like SNK, who makes the King of Fighters games. Or Atari, who's been really quiet this year, although I hear now that they're going to start selling some of their properties as well as the brand name, at least for the US branch. Not really sure what's going on with Atari. It's a shame if they really do go out of business, but if they can manage to survive, I'm all for it. And then there's Natsume, who's promising some new digital content this year, or Majesco, who published Double Dragon Neon last year with Way Forward, or even Atlas, who's got Dragon's Crown coming out this year. So I hope we find something that we'll all look forward to. Anyone who plays games does find something to enjoy. So whatever it is you're looking for, stay tuned to your TV, your mobile device, your computer, whatever you can get your hands on the latest news on your favorite video games and consoles. I'm Keegan83 of We Fell in a Tree. Thank you for always watching me and giving me the time of day. Catch you on the flip side, everyone, and enjoy E3, dudes and dudettes. See ya.